So welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's James Dean. I'm the president of the IIBA Ireland chapter, and I'm really thrilled to be kicking off our first official event of the Ireland chapter for 2022. So thank you all for being here and for joining us and for giving your time for this next hour. Today's event is the Business Analyst Defining Excellence, and it will be led by Trent Leopold. So we have the amazing Trent today. Trent will be going through the latest research findings to show how this happens, as well as some scientific studies. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. Just going to flick to the next slides. So the agenda today, I'm just going to go through the housekeeping. I will give the introduction to Trent, who is our speaker for today. Trent will give a presentation for about 45 minutes. And then at the end, we will have a small Q&A. So we'll leave probably about 10 or 15 minutes just for Q&A at the end, just to make sure that you guys have enough time. So the housekeeping, so the event slides, the deck and the recording, these will be sent out after the event. So normally a day after the event, you'll receive an email with the event slides deck and the recording. We will also send out a survey to each participant or to each attendee. So if you could just take some time just to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. For Q&A, like I said, we will leave about 10, 15 minutes at the end, just so you can ask questions so that Trent has time to answer them. Any questions, if there is, by the time we get to 7 o'clock, if there is any questions that we have that haven't been answered, I will take a note of them, and then I can send them on to Trent, and then we can send out the answers after the event. And now for the exciting parts. So today we have 2 prize giveaways throughout the presentation. So the first one is a book. It's about the hidden driver of excellence, which is by Daniel Goleman. Daniel is an author and science journalist, and for 12 years, he wrote for the New York Times. So it's actually a really good book to get your hands on. He was involved reporting on the brain and behavioral sciences, and I think this will be really good, a really good prize to give away. And the second prize is a gourmet box of chocolates, and who doesn't like chocolates? So for each prize, we will require your mailing address. So please make sure to provide us this either in the chat or by emailing events@ireland.iiba.org after the event. I will put that into the chat when Trent starts his presentation, just so you all have that email address. Okay, so for the giveaways, what we're going to do, so we're going to select 2 random attendees to give me a number between 1 and 47. And then throughout the event, Trent will ask me to recall these numbers, and whoever is at that position in the attendee list will win the prize. And it's as simple as that. So please make sure that you're listening now, because we will announce the name throughout the presentation. Okay, just going to flick to the next slide. Okay, so without further ado, we're very excited today to have Trent Leopold with us. Welcome, Trent. So a little bit about Trent, just a few points before he begins his presentation. So Trent is a business analyst with more than 20 years of experience. He holds a Master of Science degree in Managerial Science. He's an active member of IIBA, PMI, IEEE, and Who's Who. He's very much involved in the creation of various professional standards. He is a participant in human brain research with a major US university. He was actually a former US presidential advisor, which I'm sure Trent can tell you all about that. And believe it or not, he's actually a licensed airline pilot, which is really, really cool. So thank you, Trent, for being here with us today. Just a special thanks from the IIBA Ireland chapter. It's really a privilege to have you as our first speaker for our first official event, and especially because it's the start of the year as well. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to hand it over to our speaker, Trent. Thank you. Trent, I think you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, James, for a wonderful introduction. Very, very nice introduction. Let me just say that it is a distinct privilege for me to speak today for the IIBA Ireland chapter. I was so honored and privileged when I received this invitation some weeks ago, and I'm just so humbled to be able to be here today and share with you all what I believe is going to be something that can assist all business analysts in whatever they're doing in their endeavors. Because, as we're going to find out a little bit later here, what we do basically is all about excellence, and we have a unique professional duty to uphold that. And so, as James mentioned, one of the most important things about our presentation today is we're going to have some giveaways, okay? So James, if you would, while I'm in the process of sharing my screen, if you would get those 2 random numbers from a couple of our participants, so we'll have those when we get to the giveaway part. We just need each participant to give us a random number between 1 and, I think you said 47 or however many people, so that we'll have them when we get to that section, okay? And in the meantime, I'm going to get my screen ready to share here.
Perfect, perfect. I'm just looking at the attendee list now. Okay, so first random number. Can we have our first number from Anne Gaffney, please? Okay, the number 3. Perfect, thank you, Anne. And our second random number will be from Louise Kavanagh. 38. Okay, so our 2 random numbers are 3 and 38.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, James. All right, so let's get started. As I mentioned, it is indeed a privilege to speak today for the IIBA Ireland chapter. And let me tell you, right now is the best time to be a business analyst. Society is experiencing big changes, as we all know, in everything that we do. And business analysis brings a unique value and excellence to foster success in a way unlike any other professional discipline. Now, before we go too much further, just real quick, let's talk about information. Consider this $40 million diamond that you see on this lady's hand. Only one person can have this diamond at a time, but consider information. I can give you information and I can still also have that same information. So information is unique. It's a unique commodity in that its value expands through sharing. And so with this, all the materials are going to be provided to you, as James mentioned earlier. You're going to receive 4 different handouts, including the slides if you want them. And I encourage you to use them and share them with the business analysis community at large and whoever you think may benefit from them, because information is a value that expands through sharing. Okay, so today we're going to talk about excellence, and we're going to look at some recent research. I mean, some of this research has just come out within the last few days. I was able to, thanks to James and Joe, incorporate. They were patient with me enough to allow me to incorporate some of the research findings into the material. We're going to look at process models, and then we're going to look at the core techniques that you can take with you to use in your BA practice. So we have polling question number 1 here, James. Can we put the polling question number 1 up now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that question should be visible to attendees now.
Okay, so the question is real simple. Prior to today, have you considered how business analysis relates to or could relate to excellence? And the right answer is whatever your answer is. Okay, so please just chime in with your answer, and I'd like to see what the answers are here. Okay, it looks like just almost everyone has voted. And yes, a large percentage of our participants today have considered how business analysis relates to or could relate to excellence. That's wonderful. I'm glad to see that. So what I'm going to be saying today is just going to be reinforcing some things that you already know, that business analysis relates to excellence. And it's our duty as business analysts to uphold excellence. Okay. So here are the results. Well, I guess did everybody see the results, James? I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So 80%. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what is excellence? You know, when I put this presentation together, I thought, you know, I better find out exactly what is excellence if I'm going to talk about it, right? So according to Wikipedia, excellence is actually an unusually good quality. And this is the key point, it is a continuously moving target. So James did not know I was going to ask him to do this, but I'm sure that he will help me out. Can you tell me what time it is, James? Just tell me what it is right now.
It's 6:15.
6:15. Okay,
Yes.
Now, the thing about that, James, I really appreciate you telling me that, but your answer was incorrect. Okay, and here's why. Because by the time that you refer to the time and then your brain figures out what time it is, and then you communicate that through your mouth to me and it gets into my brain, guess what? The time has actually changed. And that's exactly what excellence is. It's a continuously moving target. So let's look at a couple of definitions here of what is business analysis. According to the IIBA, business analysis is a practice of enabling change. And that's the key word there in that definition, by defining the needs and recommending solutions. According to the PMI, business analysis is the set of activities performed to identify business needs, recommend relevant solutions, and elicit, document, and manage requirements. So we see that business analysis has to do with enabling change and managing requirements. And we sort of already know, based on the fact that excellence is continuously moving, that enabling these changes and managing these requirements is a continuously moving thing to do. So when does a business analyst define excellence exactly? Well, the answer to that question is now and always. A few years ago, IBM and Xerox did a study that shows the effect of information overload on human thinking processes. And what they came up with was that 28% of a typical workday is wasted by interruptions caused by unnecessary information. And about 50% of people believe that less than half of the information they receive is useful, while 42% of people use the wrong information at least once a week. Now, let me tell you a true story. As a business analyst for a large city in the United States of America, Dallas, Texas, we have two airports in the area, two major airports in the area. One is right near the downtown area of Dallas, Texas, and its name is Love Field. And the other one is between Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas, about 20 miles to the west of Love Field, and it's known as the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Well, part of my job as a business analyst was to analyze what was going on out at the airport. And one of my findings was, and this was just really somewhat shocking to me, but then when I saw these statistics about people being overloaded with information, it made sense. At least 3 people every day that are at the Dallas Love Field Airport on average, of course, this is just an average, actually think that they're at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. So that's just an example of how people use the wrong information. And that happens, as this study shows, on a fairly regular basis. Now, prior to the virus and the pandemic of 2020, the Gallup did a survey every year for about a decade concerning the workforce and disengaged workers. And what they found prior to 2020 was that 67% of the workforce is disengaged in their jobs, and 18% of the workforce is actively disengaged, working against the organization and creating a toxic environment. And that meant that only a small percentage, 15% of the workforce, was actually engaged in their jobs. Now, this was prior to 2020. And what was interesting about this analysis that Gallup did is that they started doing this, as I mentioned a minute ago, around 2010. They started doing this survey, and they found that during the decade between 2010 and 2020, workers were becoming increasingly disengaged with their work. So they decided to try to find out what was the root cause of that. And basically what the research shows is that the root cause is that there were too many things competing for people's attention, such as the television, the cell phone. The cell phone, if you think about it, really became mainstream to a large extent in that decade from 2010 to 2020. And so they determined that they thought, anyway, that a big part of the reason for this disengagement of workers was because of a lack of focus. Well, interestingly enough, the survey for the first time in more than a decade showed that worker engagement actually started rising slightly during the societal changes, a lot of people working from home, and it became a lot easier for people to focus on their work. Now, also interestingly, is that in the second half of last year, the engagement started dropping off again, okay? And right now, there is research underway to try to figure out why did the engagement start dropping off in the second half of 2021. So far, we don't really know what the results of this research is yet, but the belief is that the reason that the engagement dropped off was because a lot of people started having to go back to what we call the old normal, okay? And so, again, they became more distracted. They had to worry about maybe driving to and from work again. They had to be concerned about other things that started coming up in society. And so anyway, hopefully within the next few months, we'll find out more about why did this engagement drop off, but it looks like it could be because people started losing their focus. So polling question number 2, James, can we put that one up now?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, that should be visible now.
Okay, so the question is, during the past year, is your ability to engage and focus with work better, worse, or about the same as prior years? Just during the past years, think about your ability to engage with work. Okay, we'll give it here about another 15 or 20 seconds. Okay, so interestingly enough, the survey is showing here that it's about the same or maybe even a little bit better, but worse is coming in last place. And I think that's very, very interesting because that basically says that maybe it's about the same or better than it was a year ago. And the reason I think this is interesting is because about a year ago, I did this same survey, okay, to multiple audiences, and everybody at that time said that things were much better with their ability to engage and focus with work. The better line was way off the chart. And so to me, that says that, yes, indeed, it corresponds with the Gallup survey that people during the pandemic, when they had less interruptions and were able to focus on their work better than they were prior to the pandemic. Okay, so thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. So as James mentioned, he wrote a book a few years ago called Focus. And he determined, as a result of research that he did for this book, that really focus is what drives excellence. And one lucky person today is going to receive this book, but I'm just going to summarize a few things out of the book. First of all, Goleman talks about an inner focus, an outer focus, and an other focus. And in the book, it's very interesting, all these different focal points that the human mind is capable of producing. Well, what happens when people become overwhelmed with too many things to think about is all of these different focal points start colliding. And then people aren't able to focus effectively on anything. They don't know what airport they're in, for example, okay? So one of the things that happened when Goleman was doing his research is there was a neuroscientist in the surgical suite, and he was doing a very complex operation on a human brain, on one of his patients' brains. And while he was doing this operation, the ceiling tiles in the surgical suite started falling down. And the nurses and the other people attending in the surgery suite got very concerned about what's going to happen here in the middle of this surgery while the ceiling tiles are falling down. Well, the surgeon just kept going at his surgery, and it was almost as if he never noticed that the ceiling tiles were coming off the ceiling. Well, in fact, when the surgery was over, they asked the surgeon, "Were you even aware of the emergency we were having in the suite with the ceiling tiles falling off the ceiling?" And his answer was no. And the reason why was because he was so focused on what he was doing that he didn't even recognize what was going on around him. He was in what is called the flow state. The human brain has a state that's basically termed the flow state, and it's here on this chart where you see the blue arrow. This state has been found to be where the maximum performance for anybody in any profession occurs. It's when they're in their flow state. You notice here that they're not bored, but they're not so stressed out that they're frazzled either. They're just in that comfortable flow state. And research has shown, particularly with NBA basketball players, three-point shots and things like that, when they are performing at their best, they are in what's called the flow state. And very quickly, I want to relate to you one of the things about Thomas Edison that he did in his laboratory when he was trying to find answers to problems and experiments. He would sit in a chair with a lead ball in each one of his hands. And then he would put the problem that he was working on in front of him. He would actually write it down on a piece of paper. He would sit in that chair and relax and relax and relax and relax until one of those lead balls fell out of his hand. And then immediately that would get his attention. He would start writing on the paper exactly what he was thinking at the time when that lead ball fell out of his hand. And essentially what he was doing is he was allowing his mind to go into a phase between a conscious phase and an unconscious phase that is known as the flow state. And he claimed that that was where he could find the best answers to his problems. Okay, so let's go ahead and, if you would, James, tell us who receives giveaway number 1, which is Daniel Goleman's book, Focus, the Hidden Driver of Excellence.
Okay, so the first number that we had was number 3. And this is Alan Lenahan. Congratulations, Alan. Make sure you provide us with your mailing address, either in the chat, you can send it privately, or you can send it to the events email address, which I will post into the chat now. Congratulations again.
Okay, so we're going to start moving a little bit more quickly here through several of these slides, and then we'll slow down again here in a minute. But I want to talk to you a little bit about excellence and the brain research that's going on even today concerning excellence. What you see here is called a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. And as James mentioned earlier, I'm in a research study with the University of Texas in the United States of America, where periodically I go into one of these machines and they scan my brain while I'm thinking to find out exactly what's going on in my brain while I'm thinking, okay? So why is that important? Well, we're finding out all kinds of interesting things about the way people think. But the point I want to make here today with you all concerning excellence has to do with the research that George Miller did way back in the 1940s at Harvard and Princeton universities. He was asked to find out how many things a human being can think about at the same time, simultaneously, and be effective. And what his research showed way back before they had an fMRI machine was that people could only simultaneously focus on no more than 7 subjects. And depending on the person, that would be plus or minus 2. So some people may be 5 and some people may be 9. And a big part of the reason why George Miller was commissioned to do this research is that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration wanted to know how much can we put on an astronaut and they'll still be effective at what they're doing before we shot somebody up into the moon, right? Well, here's Clara Moskowitz. And Clara, she is standing here in front of an fMRI machine at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in the United States of America. And what her research shows through looking at the human brain while it's thinking is that people can only focus on 4 things at a time. So we're ready for question number 3, James.
Okay, you should be able to see that question now.
Okay, so the question is, how often do you find yourself multitasking or thinking about too many things? Oh, we had one person that said never. I would like to meet that person. That's wonderful. Okay,
David
so
Cohen said now is a choice that's missing from the list.
what was that? What was the choice?
Now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so interestingly enough, this is typically what we see when we ask this question to any group of people who are polled on this. Most people in the year 2022 or 2021 in particular feel like that they're just multitask. They think they get distracted with too many things, and you know that makes sense. I mean, think about all the things. You know, we have our cell phones, our computers, our televisions. If you stop and think about it, even if you're just sitting in a room basically silent, there's still a lot of things going on in that room. I mean, maybe the fan is blowing, you know, maybe you're hearing some crickets chirp. There's 2 things right there. In addition to, if you're reading a book, you might get distracted and start also think about what you're going to have for dinner. So there's your 4 things right there. So it's very easy. The point I'm making here is remember that you are a human being. At least I believe everybody on this call today is a human being. That's a whole nother topic for discussion, you know, about whether we have aliens among us. But anyway, human beings can't really think about that many things effectively simultaneously. So don't bog yourself down with doing that, okay? And thank you, James, for that poll. Okay, this is Professor Carolyn Treisman. She died a few years ago. She was a Princeton University research scientist with President Obama, where she received the Presidential Commendation for her lifelong research. Okay, her entire life, from the time she was 20 until she died a couple of years ago, her research basically concluded that what we focus on determines the conclusions that we come to. And this is key as a business analyst, okay? So let's go through a couple of things right here. How many sticks do you see here? Where is your focus? Are there 3 sticks or are there 4 sticks? Or maybe you see more. How about this cat? Is the cat going up the stairs or down the stairs? Here's a FedEx logo. Do you see the arrow that's pointing to the right between the E and the X? Now, maybe you do see that arrow, but if you've never seen that arrow before, you will never be able to look at this logo again the same way without seeing that arrow, because your focus now has been changed. Here's the Russian logo for FedEx. You see the arrow here going to the left. How many dots do you see on this screen? Is there a right answer to how many dots there are? Are these dots moving around on the screen as you're looking at them? Where is your focus? If you focus on just one dot, do you see all the other dots? How about this symbol? This symbol, just a simple gesture with your hand, okay, the OK symbol, means different things in different cultures. How about this? Pick a card, just pick a card and get it in your mind. Maybe it's the Queen of Diamonds, maybe it's the King of Spades. Just pick one card and keep that card in your mind. And now that card has disappeared. How did that happen? What is this? Is this a pound sign, a hashtag, a number sign, a tic-tac-toe board? Okay, where is your focus? All right, so we talked about the definitions for business analysis. We came to the conclusion that business analysis effectively is enabling change and managing requirements. And now, so let's look at the definitions for what is a requirement. Okay, the IIBA definition and the PMI definition, okay? We basically, as business analysts, understand what a requirement is. Sometimes I speak to project managers and they're not exactly sure what a requirement is. So believe it or not. So anyway, I'll keep this slide in here to show that to the project managers. Okay, I'm gonna go very rapidly now through some things about Agile. Okay, I know probably many of us, if not all of us, are somewhat familiar with Agile, but I want to talk a little bit about Agile here. Agile is, okay, is an adaptive way of doing things, right? So we're going to capture that excellence. Things are continuously changing. We're going to continuously adapt. Agile is iteratively, and it utilizes progressive elaboration. Okay, so we know the terms waterfall and Agile. Waterfall is where requirements are determined up front, and Agile is where requirements are determined on an ongoing basis. One of the things to remember, okay, about Agile is, according to the manifesto, the Agile Manifesto, respect and trust of each other are 2 key tenets to Agile, okay? One of the things that we have found that when people get stressed out, they're multitasking, they've got too many things to focus on, is they lose not only their self-respect and not only their self-trust. They start doubting themselves, they lose their self-respect, but they lose any other respect for another human being as well. So remember to keep respect and trust in your toolbox at all times. One of the key Agile concepts is to fail early, okay? So in Agile, it's okay to fail early and often. And we know that failure frequency becomes less as product development progresses. Okay, one of the cornerstones again is that individuals and interactions are valued more than processes and tools, and relationships are vital. Some of the methodologies for Agile here I've listed about. There's lots of different methodologies. Of course, the PMI is really focused on discipline Agile these days. SAFe, of course, is another one, but all of these are valid Agile methodologies. According to the Agile extension published by the IIBA, this is what defines Agile business analysis: the right information at the right level of detail at the right time, okay? And we're going to get into more of that here in just a minute. Okay, so we've heard about requirements lifecycle management and requirements analysis, or RAD, design and definition. Okay, just a couple of other references here for Agile. Okay, what is Agile being Agile mean? Okay, People and interactions, the item on the left here, is valued more than processes and tools. Working software is valued more than comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration is valued more than contract negotiation. Responding to change is valued more than following a particular prescriptive plan. All right, so now we're going to look at some of the core management techniques that we use for imparting excellence to our business analysis through the use of Agile. And these core techniques are listed here on your slides. This is part of your supplemental material. So you'll all receive this. Okay, so today I'm going to show you two models, okay? Two process models for excellence. And these are a part of your handouts. In the first model, note the bidirectional arrows here associated with the requirements management planning, okay? Also note that the requirements monitoring and controlling happens throughout all of the other processes. So with excellence, as things happen iteratively and with progressive elaboration, excellence is continuously added, okay? Which of course is the essence of excellence. Now here's another model. This is model number 2. And note here in this model that the bidirectional arrows are everywhere. Throughout all processes, continuous refinement, continuously imparting excellence in an agile way. So today we are going to examine in detail model number 1. And in this examination, okay, we're going to look at how business analysis for excellence can impart value at a company such as Godiva Chocolates, okay? Godiva is a Belgium-based international chocolatier. And this screenshot here is directly from Godiva's website, where they show that Agile is one of their 4 main core values. Okay, so looking at the process model, the first process in the model is needs assessment. This is where the analyst employs techniques for determining goals, objectives, and opportunities for enhancing value. The current capabilities are discovered and a definition of a desired future state is established. And since we know that excellence is a continuously moving target, we know that whatever is established as a desired future state will likely change, all right? Okay, at some point as the excellence is continuously pursued. For our example today, we're gonna pretend, and actually this is not a pretend thing, this is a true thing for Godiva. They have a need for examining their distribution channel, okay? For many years, they have offered their chocolate products for sale at physical stores and retail outlets, particularly in the United States. However, recently, with the introduction of services such as Amazon and the general societal changes that we talked about earlier, their sales from these physical resale stores has been declining, while the distribution channel, complexity, the cost, and the reliability have become concerning factors. So as you see on the slide here are some of the techniques that can be used during the assessment of the Godiva distribution channel, the needs assessment. And simply for purposes of our example today, let's choose the benchmarking technique. With the benchmarking technique, the business analyst looks at how other organizations are responding to the various challenges with the product distribution channels. Benchmarking identifies best practices, generates improvement ideas, and establishes an initial basis for measuring performance. And your supplemental material provides an explanation of all of these techniques. And you have those to take with you to use in your professional practice, okay? So the next process in the model is management planning, okay? Now this is also known as requirements engineering, and more on that in just a minute. This involves stakeholder analysis and engagement and developing the requirements management plan. Okay, and as a side note now, this term requirements engineering is being seen with more regularity. And in fact, the International Standards Organization, the ISO, in conjunction with the International Electrotechnical Commission, the IEC, and the IIIE, has published a standard, Standard 2940 29-148 here pertaining to requirements engineering. I really, if you have an opportunity, encourage you to become familiar with this standard, because it's really what the ISO and the IIIE say is what a business analysis is about, okay? So anyway, the point is that as the analyst creates excellence, they engage in this requirements engineering, okay? And if you are interested or working with blockchain, you might want to take a look at IIIE standard 24773, for example, where requirements engineering is mentioned in many instances. This, to me, with the ISO, the IEC, and the IIIE recognizing the value of managing requirements, simply is an affirmation of the value that the business analyst brings to any organization. Okay, so back to the engineering management planning here. Here are some of the techniques. And again, your supplemental material has further description of each one of these techniques. But the plan describes how requirements activities will be planned and managed iteratively and progressively elaborated. Okay, again, note the bidirectional arrow here in the model, which shows the agile nature of the requirements management planning. As input is received from requirements elicitation, for example, analysis and solution evaluation, then the requirements management plan is updated. Okay, the next process here in the model is elicitation. This is where the reasons and the requirements for seizing an opportunity are identified. Techniques for elicitation include facilitated workshops, focus groups, and observation, among the others that are shown here. Okay, so for our example today concerning the Godiva product distribution channel, one of the techniques for this example would be interviews with stakeholders for identifying capabilities and functions associated with directly shipping the Godiva chocolate, such as perhaps maintaining a temperature range during the shipping process to prevent the chocolates from melting, and of course the associated functional requirements for doing that. And for our example, focus groups with customers may be beneficial. Perhaps decorative packaging is less important to customers or a subset of customers, which could result in manufacturing cost savings and more efficient shipping. And often, okay, the result of focus groups is that we discover or find and learn things that were previously unknown, which of course results in updating the requirements management planning. Okay, so the next process here in the model is requirements analysis, where the information is examined and synthesized. Okay, so for example, clarifying, verifying, and validating the information. Okay, clarify, verify, and validate the information. Remember, a lot of times the people you're working with can't focus, so you really need to make sure you clarify, verify, and validate with them. It's important here to remember that documenting, okay, also is a part of the communicating associated with verifying and validating. It's what the person said, what you heard, or what they really meant. Did they see the cat going up the stairs when you saw the cat going down the stairs? Remember to verify and validate during requirements analysis, and a component of this is documenting, okay? As progressive elaboration happens, and you as the analyst are imparting your excellence, things will and should change as a part of the verifying and validating process, because this is by its nature part of the refining process that results in excellence. Okay. Another point here I want to mention about documenting is to remember that documenting can include things other than the written word, such as audio or video recordings. In today's world, the written word is actually becoming extinct. So anyway, here are some of the analysis techniques. And again, each of these is further described in your handouts. But for purposes of our example, the Moscow technique can be assistive in establishing packaging requirements for the various Godiva products. For example, maybe a Godiva truffle requires more packaging cushion than a Godiva hard chocolate does. Now, monitoring and controlling here means iteratively managing and monitoring requirements change. The important aspect to remember here with monitoring and controlling is to be sure and keep the requirements within the scope of the analysis, okay? So for example, in the example we're talking about today, we're concerned with distribution channels at Godiva and how the products can be more effectively distributed to customers. So in the event a suggestion is made for offering a new Godiva product line, for example, maybe offering fresh lobster, this would be outside the scope of the initiative, which is focused on product distribution. So as part of monitoring and controlling, you as the analyst need to keep the initiative within the realm of its focus. And as we saw earlier, losing focus is one of the easiest and quickest ways to also lose excellence. Okay, techniques for monitoring and controlling here. Change control boards, dependency analysis, traceability matrices. So for our example, we'll just say a traceability matrix can be implemented for tracing or linking requirements from their origin to the actual deliverables that satisfy the requirements. Solution evaluation includes assessing whether the solution delivers the desired value. Was the right thing done? Was the right thing done correctly? Techniques with solution evaluation include examination, where testing and/or demonstration is done. The Delphi technique is one solution evaluation technique where an anonymous review, of course, of the distribution channel and its processes can be done. Excuse me. So we have been through each of the processes for Model 1 here with our example of looking at the Godiva distribution channel. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this was something that Godiva actually did about 2 years ago, and they have made substantial changes to their distribution channel. Now, one more process here that's important, and that is closure. The model doesn't list closure because with closure, the agile analysis itself is considered to be done. And it's important here to note, okay, that with agile itself, when something is done is somewhat of a matter of debate, okay? We know that since excellence is a continuously moving target, done is somewhat elusive. So you see why closure is actually omitted from the model. Maybe an extended pause is a preferable term to closure. Nonetheless, though, closure is important. Okay, in our example, let's assume that Godiva has decided that they're at, excuse me. let's assume, in our example here that Godiva has decided that their agile analysis of the distribution channel is adequate, okay, and they're done. Well, it's important for the analyst to prepare a lessons learned and support any transition of the agile analysis or the results of that into the production or into the, what the initiative is actually doing, okay? So techniques here for closure include retrospectives, and it's possible that the agile analysis is paused. However, retrospectives to include what worked and what did not work and why or why not can impart excellence to the next agile analysis. Okay, so here's this diamond, and I want to show you this picture to help solidify, help you get a picture, okay, if you don't have one already, of what the BA does compared to what the project manager does. Because in my discussions with BAs and PMs all across organizations all over the world, there's a real challenge here in understanding what the differences are. Well, as you can see here where the red arrows are, this is where the BA is involved, okay? So we have this big rock that came out of the ground over here on the left. Well, before the rock even came out of the ground, the BA may have been involved as determining a needs assessment. Do we need to find a rock this size to make a diamond out of or not? That's where a BA may be involved. Then when the rock is found, the BA may get involved there. What are the requirements for the actual diamond that we're going to create that somebody's going to wear on their finger? Well, then those requirements are all done. And then the project manager gets involved to actually create the diamond, okay? To do the temporary endeavor that has a definite beginning and a somewhat definite end, okay, or at least an extended pause to get that diamond made. And then the BA gets involved again, okay? What can we learn about that diamond? What does the customer want different about that diamond now? After the customer wears that diamond for a while, guess what? They come up with another idea of what constitutes excellence, and the whole thing starts over, just exactly like what we looked about in our process model. And the terms that they use in the diamond industry, okay, for creating a diamond out of a rock, or a piece of jewelry out of this diamond rock, is planning, cleaving, brooding, polishing, and final inspection. Well, they have their own terms, just like we as business analysts have our terms that have been shared with you here today. Okay, so we're ready now, James, for giveaway number 2. And I believe the number on that was number 38. Hopefully we still have 38 people with us.
We do indeed. Just let me scroll through the list here to see who the lucky winner is. Okay, number 38 is Nupur Chowan. Well done, Nupur. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you, James. And Nupur, be sure and get your address to James so we can mail you that box of chocolates, okay? So in conclusion, okay, we've taken a look at excellence. We've taken a look at the brain research around excellence. You have to take with you today definitions and models to practice excellence in your professional business analysis role. And we talked about the core techniques involved with all of that. You have all of this in your toolkit. Please be sure and get the supplemental material and share this and use this as appropriate. You, the business analyst, define excellence. That's basically what we do. We define excellence now and always. So thank you again for the privilege and the honor of speaking with you all today from Dallas, Texas. As you can tell, I'm somewhat passionate about this. This is who I am and what I do. And so now I wish we had more time for questions, but we do have and I promise if we don't get to all the questions, I'm happy to answer more through the email. And James mentioned that he would capture those from the chat, and we can follow up on email later if need be. Okay, so do we have any questions? I guess that's the first question, James.
We do indeed. At the moment, we have probably about 8 questions. So okay. I think we can take the time to answer them.
Okay, great.
Because we're recording the session, if anyone would like to leave, that's absolutely fine, because we will send out the recording. So we can, because there's only a few questions that we need to answer. So I guess we'll kick straight into it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so the first question is, hi Trent, do you think companies should cater for different personalities in terms of their perfect flow when working, like allowing flexible working times? For example, some people are morning birds and work better than others, work best in the evening or at night.
Oh, that is an excellent question. And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. Yes. No two people on the face of this earth, even if you're an identical twin, are the same, okay? And we all like different things to eat. We all have our unique things. And yes, organizations do need to do that. They do need to, and I think the term was cater, but they need to make accommodations and understand that everybody is a unique individual and has different ways of approaching things. And that's what really, that really is what contributes to excellence, right? So if you're in an organization where they're telling you, you have to sit over here in this corner with your nose in this circle for 20 minutes every day, they don't understand at all about about a human being, first of all, right? So absolutely, yes, I very much believe that in work flexibility, just for those reasons that we talked about, all this brain research and the fact that, everybody is a little bit different about the way that they think and the way they operate. Absolutely, yes. So anyway, I don't want to, I know we have some more questions, James.
Thank you, Trent. Okay, the next one. Are there tools and techniques you recommend for how to have BAs ask questions without developers or other team members feeling like we don't trust them? In some cultures, asking questions is immediately received as distrust when the BA is really trying to understand better to develop better solutions.
Yes, that's a great question. And culture always plays an important role. So it goes back really, and it goes back even to the first question. And it goes to the presentation I mentioned, respect and trust. That's bottom line, respect. So, if you don't know whether a culture or you don't know whether somebody likes you to ask questions, just ask them that question. Say, look, I'm getting to know you. I need to understand, is this okay for me to ask you questions, or do we need to approach things a different way? And there's a whole nother area, and it's mentioned in the BABOK, okay? It's called mind mapping, all right? And I encourage you to kind of study and learn a little bit more about mind mapping. And another area that I think is also worth engaging in is an area called NLP, or Neuro Linguistic Programming, NLP. This is where you learn based on what the words people are using, how they relate to the world. So for example, if I say all the time, I see this, or I see that, or I see this, that means that that person that you're hearing that from relates to the world visually. If somebody says, I heard this, or I heard that, that means that they believe in hearing things. So yes, you do have to be aware of the culture. Did I answer the question, James? I do this sometimes. I get a little bit off on a tangent, but I think I answered the question. And yes, you do need to remember the one thing is everybody deserves respect. Okay. A lot of times I have found in my life that when people are disrespectful, it's because they don't understand the value of respect themselves. And so it's up to us to show them and teach them the value of respect. But yes, we always want to put respect on the top shelf. Okay.
Thanks, Trent. The next one, we have a question here that was based off the process models that you showed. So the two different ones. Someone is asking, what is the difference between both the models, as both have covered all 6 knowledge areas?
Okay, the difference between the model is the first model, the one we talked about today, okay? It has somewhat, although there is, bi-directional flow, obviously in that model, it has a congruency to it a little bit more than the other model does. The other model has really no congruency. It's arrows going back and forth all over the place, okay? And I am not here to say today that one model is more correct than the other one, because I don't believe that to be the case. I do, from my practice and from my experience, I will say that I do prefer model number 1 because of the congruency that is there. Believe it or not, people, as a general rule, and there is lots of scientific research even to back this up, okay, what I'm about to say. People do like to have some sort of a framework in general to work in, okay? They don't like to just be all over the board everywhere on everything, and so as now, not everybody, but most people, that is the case. So I do think there's places where model 2 is more valuable than model 1. If you're going into an analysis where things are just really bad, messed up, and there's lots of problems, and I mean, people shooting each other and all kinds, I don't know if that's an exaggeration, but just a real bad situation, you probably want to go in with number 2 and try to get a handle on things before you funnel things down and do it into model number one a little bit better. So that's the reasoning behind all that.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much, Trent.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is quite lengthy, so I'll read it slow.
Okay, and I'll take a note here so I don't forget. Okay.
We have end users that try to focus on the solution, where our BA team is trying to get them to start with identifying the needs. Are there tips you can give on how to steer stakeholders to focus more on the business needs and business requirements instead of trying to give us the solution and tell us to build it?
Yes, and I've got some, and actually I've got some research that's just out on this, just within the last couple of weeks. And honestly, I would like to share that. Can you get that person's email, James? Because what I'm going to do, and I'll make this available to whoever wants it. I want to share what has just come out of the laboratory to answer that very question in the last couple of weeks. It has to do with a way of thinking called zooming in, zooming out, and zooming deep and wide. Okay, and what you need to do is you need to teach the people in your company about this whole thing of zooming in, zooming out, and zooming deep and wide. And we could do a 30-minute presentation just on this. But once you do that, once you go through that zoom in, zoom out, zoom deep and wide exercise with them, I'll guarantee you, I can't give you a 100% guarantee, but I'll guarantee you 95% of the time, you're going to be able to focus them more on what their needs are rather than the solution. And that's not an uncommon thing. Everybody thinks they already know what the answer is, and they don't want to listen to you. Okay. And I've got another presentation actually that talks just about that, about how you get people to listen to you, which may be somewhat applicable to this same question. But I would like to share out that zoom in, zoom out, and zoom deep and wide. There's some additional technique around all that. And if we can get that person's email in the chat, I'll be happy to send you the details on that. This is stuff that has just come out of the lab from about the last 4 years of research in the research study that I'm in at the University of Texas with the fMRI about how this zooming in and zooming out works. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Trent. We have the name of the attendee who posted their
Great.
questions, so we can send you on their email so you can send out that to them.
Yes, I'm happy to do so. And anybody else that wants it, I'll send it to whoever. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, the next question. This is how to achieve excellence or perform BA activities where there may be resistance to change.
That's interesting because we run up against resistance to change a lot of times. Here's my suggestion, really. Do exactly what we did today. When somebody resists change, or you're seeing that they're one of the primary influencers to resisting change, ask them to tell you what time it is. And then explain to them that they really can't do that because things are always moving, okay? And excellence always moves. Ask them to look up the definition of excellence and find out that it's a continuously moving target. And really, there's no argument against any of this. I mean, it's anybody, when they stop and think about it, they realize that change is a part of life on this planet, okay? I mean, we can make the best chocolate. We can make the best product. We can make the best diamond ring that goes on somebody's finger that sells for $40 million. But guess what? Tomorrow, somebody else is going to decide that something else is more excellent, and they're going to have one for $50 million. And then the next day, there's going to be one for $60 million. So people that don't understand that change is a part of any organization, I guarantee you they're setting their organization up for failure. And for dissolving and for problems, because we have to impart change and recognize change. And I think that if we just even look at what's happened in the last couple of years in a society, we all have come to recognize that, we have to adapt. We have to continue to impart excellence, but change is just a part of reality. Okay. So that's my long answer to a short question.
Thanks, Trent.
Yes, sure.
Then the next one is, this is the slide on solution evaluation.
Okay.
Do we have any information, or do you have any information that you could share about how change management works within solution evaluation?
Well, that's a big question. There's you know, that's really a kind of a whole nother topic in my mind anyway. The way I see it, okay, is that change management is a part of the implementation of the solution, okay, so to speak. The evaluation of the solution kind of gets back toward going back to the beginning of the model, the needs assessment. So you're going to evaluate that solution, and was the change, did it bring about the desired results or not? I guess that's where it would tie into the change as a part of the solution evaluation. Did the change bring about the desired results or the desired value? So I know that's not a real direct answer to that question, but I see change management as being sort of a whole different discipline. And if we went back to that diagram of the difference between what a BA and a PM does, we could update that and put in there, where does change management come in? And it would kind of be between those two PM arrows, in my view. That's in my view. But that would be another thing that would be interesting to discuss, or maybe have another study or presentation on that whole thing about change management. I see that as a whole different area. I see change management as really somewhat being a discipline in and of itself. But by the same token, okay, as we discussed today, we also are kind of managing the change as well, because we know things are always continuously being refined in the things that we do in those areas. So this really isn't a very good answer to the person's question, but that's my answer. Okay.
Thanks, Trent.
Okay.
This
I
is
wish
a
I wish I had a better answer for you, more concise, but that's, I kind of talked a lot around that. So, but anyway, sorry about that. Okay.
I suppose
ahead,
it's a huge topic and a huge subject. Like you said, you could do a whole presentation on it.
Yeah.
So maybe when we have you back as a speaker again for one of our future events, we could do change management, or we could include that in some way or some aspects.
Yes, that'd be something worth taking a little bit, because we don't want to step on what the change management people are doing either. Okay. But like I say, I see that more of in that area of implementing the product into the organization, whatever that product is, whether it's a change process or a diamond ring or whatever. I see that as more of a part of that, in between those two arrows where the PM does what they do. That's the way I see it anyway. Okay. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This is a follow-up question to the change management. So
okay.
How does change management work in agile methodology?
Well, again, I in that area, there is the change management comes, and a lot of times most of the time what change management's looking at is they're just wanting to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, so that whatever's being put into the organization or whatever product's being put out there isn't going to cause a problem somewhere that was unforeseen. It's kind of like another set of eyes, so to speak, on the initiative. It's kind of a check and balance, if you will. So I don't see, to me, again, I see that as being right in there in between those two PM arrows.
Okay. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, but there is one in the chat that I found.
Okay, we'll take those two, right?
Yeah, of course. So any thoughts or techniques on how to sustain change?
Well, you've got to, okay, if your organization doesn't want to sustain the change, okay, for whatever reason, again, it's an educational thing. You got to explain to them that, things are alive, okay? I mean, people are alive. The way, when technology, okay, now I happen to remember way back before there was any Windows version 1. Then there was Windows 3.1, and then there was Windows 95, and then there was Windows XP, and then there was Windows 7. Well, why is all that happening? It's because of the change. It's the innovation basically embraces the change. And so if you're not going to change, if your organization is not willing to change, that means basically that they're not willing to innovate. And another organization down the road is going to innovate. There's going to be, like in our example today with the Godiva chocolates, if Godiva doesn't figure out how to get a handle on their distribution channel, guess what? Somebody else is going to. And pretty soon there won't be any more Godiva. You have to continuously change and adapt and innovate in the world today, or you won't be existing as an organization because somebody else will. So, educate it. Again, go back to that example of time, just walk up to whoever thinks that they don't want to change and say, explain to them. Things are always changing. You can't tell me what time it even is because it's changed by the time you figure out what it is. Okay, does that answer that question? Any follow-up to anybody else?
I don't see any follow-ups. I'm just checking the chat just to make sure I haven't missed anything. But I think that's it. Yeah, I don't see any more. Deepmala has, she's raising her hands. Would you like to ask a further question, Deepmala? Ah, it was a mistake. Okay. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all for questions, Trent. Thank you so much for the session. Thanks for being here and for being the first speaker of the Ireland chapter and kicking off this 2022 year.
You're most certainly welcome, James. And it's a privilege and an honor. And let me just say, if anybody has any questions later or wants to talk more about any of this stuff, you can email me. You see my email address there. It's also on your handouts. And I'm always happy to, I get a lot of email, but I always will respond to you depending on what's going on. It may be a day or two, but I always will. And I always enjoy speaking with all of our, professional community, because that's how we all become better, is learning from each other, right? And that's the reason for this forum that you hosted today, James. And again, I just thank you so much. It's a real privilege and an honor to be your presenter today.
Thank you, Trent. It was great having you here today, and it was a really interesting presentation, and we look forward to connecting again in the future.
Absolutely. Yes. Anytime you're in Dallas, anybody ever comes to Dallas, Texas, let me know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you all have a good evening, and I think we'll leave it there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.